I think I saw many of you just about a little over an hour ago and opened our gathering with a prayer. So this morning, now, I'd like to spend just a few minutes with you talking about what we call our Jesuit identity, the identity of Creighton. And Creighton is a part of a system of schools where there are 27 in the United States that are what we called university or college level schools that are all recognized and owned and identified as Jesuit. There's also quite a number of Jesuit high schools around the country. And so we're all part of the system of education. There are a number of middle schools as well. In the world, last year, the General of the Society of Jesus, the Father Superior, assembled all of the universities across the world that are Jesuit schools, and there are 204 of us from all countries. It might interest you to know there are something like 40 universities, Jesuit universities, in India alone. But he assembled all of the presidents and mission officers of these universities to Bilbao, Spain, which is this town closest to the birthplace of St. Ignatius of Loyola. It's very close to Loyola Castle in Spain. And so we spent several days there considering what it means for our schools to be Jesuit across the globe and how we can work more closely together, how we can be more supportive of one another, how we can, in fact, leverage this kind of universal participation that we have across the globe. So you'll be hearing in your years here of this kind of newish development on our identity, how we understand our identity to be related to our brother and sister schools across the globe. But I'd like to just talk a little bit about what are we talking about when we talk about Jesuit identity. First of all, we're navigating, since that's your theme, navigating the tradition and insights of over 500 years of education in this particular tradition. So for the last half a millennium, Jesuit schools have been formed across Europe, Latin America, Eastern Asia, now Africa, in fact, virtually all of the continents of the world. And what characterizes the identity of a Jesuit school, and what, after all, is identity? We here at Creighton talk about a couple of elements. One is that we are Catholic and Jesuit. And of course, you can't be Jesuit without being Catholic. Catholic is the bigger circle, if you will. Jesuit is the smaller circle within that. Catholic is a tradition of education that goes back into the Middle Ages. The first universities in the world were all Catholic universities. University of Paris, University of Bologna, University of Oxford in England, and so on. Many of them now are no longer attached to a particular religious tradition, but they all began as Catholic schools, Catholic Jesuit schools, Catholic schools, and then gradually in the 15th and 16th centuries, the Jesuits developed their own tradition. So identity is who you are. So we are Catholic and Jesuit. That's the identity that we have. And we also have a mission. That is, we have been sent, we believe, the university has been sent for the purpose, first of all, of education. So our first mission is education of students. But we also have a mission to be about what we call today a social project. Proyecto Social, as it began in Latin America, is about influencing the neighborhood, as it were, the city, the state, the nation, in fact, the whole world, with some values that we want to practice and invite others to practice with us. So we'll look at those values. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, who was Ignatius of Loyola? Some of you already know this. Those of you who came from Jesuit high schools could probably recite this word for word. But in any case, Ignatius was a 15th century actually, born in 1491 or 92, we're not sure which has another, that's a date that has another relationship to us in the United States. But in that year, when Spain unified itself and reconquered its own peninsula, so to speak, Isabella also sponsored Christopher Columbus, who came into the New World, discovered this part of the world. For Europe, which is an interesting and longer story, there's lots of ways of historically looking at that particular event. But Ignatius was born that year to a noble family in northern Spain. But he was not pure-blood Spanish, and in that time, that was kind of important. Those of you that have read Harry Potter know that that kind of came up in the Harry Potter series about mixed bloods are not the happiest people. Well, Ignatius would have been a mixed blood of two traditions or two populations. One was an ancient tribe called the Etruscati, or Basque people, in northern Spain and southern France. And they're one of the oldest languages in the world is Etruscati. Well before Indo-European and all of the European languages emerged, the Basques were talking to each other. So Loyola was from a Basque father and a Spanish noblewoman, a Castilian noblewoman. So he was a privileged, noble, fairly wealthy family he was from. He was one of the youngest sons of a very large family, and as such, he wouldn't have inherited a lot of the wealth, but he did inherit the nobility and so forth. But he gave all of that up after struggling as a soldier to win some glory for Spain, and was defeated by the French, but in the course of that was severely injured. And so he spent over a year recovering, and during that year of recovery, he encountered God. And that is perhaps the most important thing in terms for our sakes that happened. He encountered the living God who really took him, as he said, under his wing as a schoolmaster takes a student. And so Ignatius discovered what God desired for him. And what he really discovered is, what was he born for? Critical question: why are you here in this time and in this place and in this moment of history? Why have you been brought here? Why have you selected here? Those are the kinds of questions that Ignatius himself faced and that he challenges all of us to face. In the course of his pondering these questions, he found a profound connection to the fact that God is discoverable in everything on the earth and in the cosmos. God is discoverable whether you're studying physics or medicine or the arts, whether you're learning to dance or to paint, whether you're reading poetry or literature, whether you're writing papers in sociology or anthropology, whether you're studying medicine or pharmacy, whether you are becoming a business tycoon. God is discoverable in every subject imaginable. So that we talk about the value of finding God in all things, or finding what it means to be in relationship, not only to God, but to God's creation through our studies. So all of our studies open us to that. But in a very special way, the Jesuits were really interested in knowing what it means to be human. And part of that is because after Ignatius recovered, had his experience of discovery of God, and wrote his account of that discovery in a series of exercises called the Spiritual Exercises of St. Ignatius, which today many people trace. They walk that path with him. He went to school for the first time in his life, actually. He knew how to speak and write Spanish, but he did not know, and Basque, but he did not know how to speak or write Latin, which was the language of the educated in his day. So in order to do that, he went back to school with children. So he was not a traditional student. He was in his early 30s at that point. In any case, he then went on to the University of Paris, which was the sort of Harvard of its day. It was the university that everybody referred to as the preeminent university of the time, academically rigorous. And the University of Paris at that period is most famous for developing a whole series of studies called the humanities. The study of what it means to be human through history, through literature, through the arts, through theology, through philosophy, and so forth. So the founding fathers of the Society of Jesus, Ignatius and 9 other companions, all were graduate students at the University of Paris together. And there, they developed an appreciation for a mode of education that was organized, that was planned, and that was grounded in this knowledge of what it means to be human. So you'll be invited to discover more deeply here what it means for you to be human at this time in history. And perhaps at no time since Ignatius's time has that been a terribly important question, because with the AI revolution, the IT revolution and so on that's going on, we are rethinking as human beings what it means to be human. How do we understand ourselves in the face of artificial intelligence and so on? So the Jesuit vision is to dig deep into discovery of humanity, what it means to be human. So even if you decide to do professional studies in one of our professional schools eventually, you will be grounded in a humanities appreciation. And this becomes very critical. Another thing that they learned at the University of Paris and that they developed more deeply as their own kind of signature form of scholarship or studies was a form of pedagogy. That is a method of teaching that involves understanding the context that the student comes from and that we live in at this time. So where did you come from? Where are you now? Your context is changing from wherever you came from. Even if you came from Omaha, coming to Creighton is a slightly different context than living out by Scott High School, for example. So as you come into the context, a new context, some things are broken loose, and it gives you a chance to ask some key questions about who am I, where am I going, what am I for, what's important in life. So we look at that context and then invite you into a series of experiences, explore your own experience, try some new experiences, reflect on those experiences. You're going to hear the word reflection over and over here at Creighton, because we stop and ask the question, what just happened? What happened to you and inside of you? We want to know what's going on, not only in your head, but in your heart, and we want those combined. That's what it means to have a Jesuit identity as a school. That reflection should drive you to some kind of action, probably action in service. First of all, service to yourself, but then service to others that you will be invited to serve. Sometimes the action in service becomes a new context, because it's service not just for others, but with others who are different from ourselves in various ways. They might be different culturally, they might be different linguistically, they might be different sociologically. They're just simply different in any case because they're different human beings than we are. So the action then actually becomes another context. And we evaluate what has already happened, so you'll get grades, yes, but grades are about helping you understand, what did you learn? How did you learn it? Is it firmly connected with other things you've learned? We want you to put that course and that course and that course all together to come up with a common vision for yourself. So that's one of the things we will work with you on and help you with. And then finally, we're back to the context. You're in a new context now. With all this new information, with all this new learning, you're in a different context. So we start the cycle over and over and over again. So our pedagogy are very basic ways that we approach scholarship. The very basic way that we teach here is characterized by this identity of being a Jesuit school. And part of that identity commands and compels us, since all things belong to God and God is discoverable in all things, it calls us to be just and merciful. Father Pedro Arrupe, who was also Basque, born in northern Spain, was the Father General of the Society before Father Hans Kolvenbach that you heard about this morning. Father Arrupe is the one for whom the phrase for and with others, men and women for and with others, is accredited. He spoke that to a group of alumni of Jesuit high schools in Spain a number of years ago and talked to them about how we have failed our students if we have not taught them to be just, if we have not taught them to be merciful, And today, the Jesuits add another important word: if we have not taught you how to be reconcilers, if we have not taught you how to help peace be made in the world, how to connect people who are in conflict and give them an opportunity to be reconciled. So we invite you into this wonderful work of transforming the world. That's what we see ourselves about in our identity. Jesuit education is ultimately transformative. I had a graduate student. We're just starting a graduate program this term on campus also just today. So I was telling them that a group of freshmen is on campus also. We're very excited about that. Some of them are kind of freshmen too, in the sense that they're coming to start a new program in graduate studies. And I said, what was really interesting is one of the more advanced students in the program said to them last night at a dinner, Creighton is not just about a program, it's about transformation. We anticipate that our students will grow and change. And I would encourage you in these coming weeks to start even keeping a journal or something where you're jotting down thoughts about this journey. Journal and journey have the same root, which is daily, okay? So a journey is every day. You are on a journey. Ignatius would tell you, you are on a pilgrimage. He called himself the pilgrim. Why? Because he was going from what he was to what he could ultimately become in God's hope and plan for him. And you too are on a pilgrimage. A university is a pilgrimage of sorts. You're moving from one way of living your life, of thinking about who you are, of understanding your own family, of understanding your milieu, your worldview, your values, and you're going to be challenged in all of that. You're going to be encouraged to think anew about everything that you know. You're going to be encouraged to put together what you know so that it's a pattern, so that it makes sense, and it invites you into action, and that action is to transform the world. But you can't transform the world if you don't transform yourselves first, or if you don't allow yourself to be transformed. So we enable each other to be transformed into the best possible human being we could become. That's our hope and our vision and our expectation. It's a very aspirational hope. It's kind of a high hope, but we actually see our students doing it. We were very excited this spring at our graduation to have one of our graduates come back, a man who graduated 16 years ago. And in the 16 years, he has been very, very successful in the National Basketball Association. I was going to say, what are the letters? NBA. He's a basketball player for the Salt Lake City team. And he came and gave our graduation address. 16 years ago, he graduated. He's something like number 3 or number 4 all-time three-point shooter in the National Basketball Association. And he said, you know, one of the things that's really occurred to him is that many of his colleagues, his teammates, his peers, are people of color. He's an Iowa farm boy. So he said, I'm of the white and very privileged community. But what I've discovered is that we're all privileged. We need to understand what our privilege is about. And as he spoke of how important it is to be in relationship with one another, to reach across all kinds of boundaries and to bring about reconciliation, I, who am the mission officer of this university, could only think, oh my God, we were so successful with him. Not because he's a successful basketball player, that's pretty wonderful, but because he is a successful human being. He's encountered his own inner life. He's discovered who he is. He's a wonderful husband and father. He's a man who has a vision and a hope and a purpose, and he's begun to publish in some sense, in great danger to himself. He's begun to publish on this topic of white privilege because he's so convinced that we in the United States have not really seriously engaged the very severe problems of racial disintegration. Again, it's that openness to transform the world. And who knows, in 20 years it'll be, when you have been out 16 years, what vision you will have of reconciliation. But my hope is that you will use these years here at Creighton to give yourself the time and the place to be authentically and fully who you are meant to be. A flourishing human being who enables your brothers and sisters throughout the world to find themselves, to experience themselves, and flourish with you. That's what we envision for our graduates. That's what it means to have the identity of Jesuit and Catholic in this world. And so, as I say, it's a high aspiration, but we anticipate that you will join us in this project. And the success, our success as a university, will be measured by your transformative powers, your ability to put your education together with us and to bring about this justice, peacemaking, and reconciliation of the human condition so that all of us can flourish. I wish you well on this journey. It's a great pilgrimage. It's been a privilege to be part of it for me, and I hope to continue to be part of it, and I look forward to welcoming you even more to campus in a few weeks, as Dr. Murray said this morning. So God's blessings. Thank you.